Some people use an acronym called KISS. K-I-S-S. Keep it simple, stupid. But I have a tendency to overthink things. Sometimes that's a good thing. Keeps me from doing something stupid that might eventually get me hurt. Other times, all it really does is cause a 2-hour project to turn into a 2-week-long ordeal. Alright, so at the end of the last video, I got so focused on the fact that we had to lift that transmission up to the point that I put a whole bunch of overthought into that cab. Overthought is when you get so focused on one problem that you start complicating the whole plan because you're putting too much thought into that one problem and everything else just cannot organically happen. And this is where I complicated things. See, if I put that cab on and check it out, I still got to pull it off, make any modifications I might have to make. Plus, we still got to rebuild this, or at least modify this crossmember. So, I put the cab on, I got to take it off to do the crossmember, or I can go ahead and do the crossmember, and if the cab is fine, then I don't have to take it off. We can keep moving with the rest of the truck. I didn't lose you, did I? Now, before we get started on this crossmember, keep in mind that I am fully aware that this engine needs to be at a 3-degree incline towards the front. But the frame is not sitting at ride height. These tires and rims are just some stuff I gathered up to put on here because somebody stole the rims and tires, the wheels that were supposed to be on this truck. That wouldn't be so bad, but this old boy don't even know how to keep the wheels clean, or the rest of the truck. Of course, he does live on a dirt road, so there's that. What I'd really like to do is grab some 15-16-inch billet wheels to go on it, but I can't find any of those that I can actually afford. So we're going to end up bringing our transmission down just probably about a 1/2 inch, just to make sure that we've still got 3 degrees after we get matching wheels on this truck. You should do better. Wow! Glad that's going to be under the truck so nobody can see it. Now the original plan was just cut this here, cut it here, bring it up 4.5, 5 inches, whatever, in both locations, weld that back in. But once we lifted this transmission tail up a little bit, it became clear we're gonna have to do something with the transmission mount tab, whatever you want to call it. So at that point I decided, let's go ahead and rebuild this whole transmission crossmember. I should point out that I've got a piece of angle iron running all the way across the bottom of the frame. And the reason for that piece of angle iron, that's for measurement, because we know that the bottom of our cab sits 5 inches off the bottom of the frame. And that will give us a measurement or a point of reference to measure to, so that whenever we're building our crossmember, we can come up and over and down and all that good stuff. All right, first thing we want to do is support this transmission so that we can get the factory crossmember out from under. Yeah, not happy with that. There we go. Of course, once you get it up, son. Taking a lot of pressure off that frame. All right. These are just temporary bolts, by the way. All right. That was really good work right there, and I hate the fact that I'm just going to toss this out. So I gathered up some unused metal from the scrap metal pile. This is 2-inch wide channel iron, 3/16 inch thick on the outside plate. And that should be good enough. From what I understand, that's probably actually overkill, but we'll find out. All right, let's think about this just for a second. If we bring that cross member up and over like we're talking about, then we still got to have a gap at the top to account for, keep from rattling, what have you, on the bottom of the cab floor. Which means we didn't really pick up any additional space. So maybe what we need to do is just run the cross member at the bottom, do a tab on each frame rail, and bolt the cross member in. That way it's still removable and all that space is usable. This whole thing would have been done 2 weeks ago if I'd have just done this to begin with. Alright, we got our paint ground off. We've got our big ugly mount bolted into place temporarily. And we got our, I don't even know what you want to call that bar anymore, our reference bar in place. That's what we're going to use to hold our cross member, which is right there. Got all of our stuff ready, so let's see what we can do. First thing we got to do is pick this transmission up enough that we can get that cross member in place. Now this mount is way longer than it needs to be, but that's because originally the plan was to have this cross member that's going right here a couple inches further back. It was actually going to go here. So that's why that mount is so long. But of course we've redesigned this since then. Yeah. Too far. That'll work. It might not have been a good idea to weld that solid while it was attached to the transmission mount. Probably should have just tacked it. Alright, now I gotta weld the inside, and then we'll cut off the excess. Stay. Not gonna be a pretty weld. Bubble gum! Which is totally different from bubble gum. Well, that one's better, but Good thing it's under the truck. Let's let that cool. Yeah. You know I'm about to change this plan, right? You see, you know what? Hold on. All right, so let's say this is your frame. The bottom of the frame is the lowest point that we can go with our cross member. So if we bring our cross member in right here, weld in a tab, we can bolt in the cross member to the tab that's welded to the frame. All happy, fine, good. Except for the fact that it's bolted on the bottom. So if something happens to one of your bolts, next thing you know, you lost your transmission because the cross member fell out from underneath the truck. So the next idea is come in, weld your tab at the bottom, put your cross member on top. That way your cross member sits and you can put your bolt downward. That way if you lose a nut off the bolt, then nothing's going to move, hopefully. But there's two problems with this idea. And the first one is the fact that I live on a dirt road. And this channel right here is going to collect about an inch worth of red clay going up and down my road. And that's not going to work for me. The next problem is now you've got twice this space that is taking up the room that you're trying to create. That'll be all right. Got a new plan. Nope. Hey, dummy. Turn your gas on. Oops. All right, before we release the pressure from this jack, I want to point out that this transmission crossmember mount plate is sitting downward at a slight angle, and that is because I had it bolted too tight to the rubber mount, and when I welded it in, which by the way is not a horrible looking weld, that's where it was at. That's what happened. My welds over here are not quite as pretty, and the one over there is dog ugly. So let's see what happens. Oh, beautiful. So now we just gotta take this bottom bar off and hope that nothing falls apart. Which we know it's not gonna. Oh, well, I guess maybe that would. All right. Transmission didn't move. Let's get an angle finder and see how much of an angle that's actually at. Because the bubble is all the way over, like a plumber. All right, of course, now we've already talked about these tires and rims and what have you, but angle finder says 3 degrees. Wow. I'm impressed. Who'd have thunk it? Now, I know what you're thinking. That doesn't look very removable. But it turns out that everything is removable. And removing it is something we'll have to deal with later in life, should that situation occur. So last night, I finished editing this video, and I finally got to watch the completed video, and then I saw what you guys just saw. Which, by the way, is not a horrible looking weld. Yeah, that weld's not ugly, but it's also not exactly in the right spot. The vertical side of the weld doesn't quite have enough penetration. So I went ahead and made this weld ugly too. Now they all match, but at least I feel better about how strong it is. Look, it's just a mini truck. You don't have to overcomplicate it, but you do need to try to get it right, even if it takes multiple attempts. Peace, love, and mini trucks.